What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Lockdown 23-1. Now, this is going to be a remake to my very first day in prison video, okay? So, I'm going to really explain this in depth to y'all and really try to break down this penitentiary for y'all and how extreme of a penitentiary it was, okay? This prison is called Greensville Correctional Center, and a lot of pictures that I had in my very first video, a lot of people confused it and said, stop stealing CDC photos and acting like that's a prison you're in. Well, let me just get one thing straight with y'all, okay? I don't take photos from the California Department of Corrections, okay? I don't. If you Google it, the photos that I'm going to be showing you are Greensville Correctional Facility. Alright? So, first things first, let's go ahead and break down this first major institution that I went to when I just turned 18. Alright, as you can see, man, this compound does not look as big as the picture shows it, okay? This compound was actually huge, okay? It is huge, and I believe it is the largest compound in the United States, okay? It was like 5 prisons put into one. Now, as you can see, if you can't tell, there's 3 buildings on each part of the compound, okay? There's 3 little buildings, okay? You can see if you look close, and each one of those are housing units, all right? Housing units that held probably about 300 people in each, if not more. So each building, each side, there was an S1, S2, and S3, okay? And they had 3 buildings on each. They held about 300 people to each building. So you do the math. That's how many inmates were in this compound. And I believe it might be more. Now, in every last one of those buildings, just keep this in mind. When I was in there, there was no heat. I mean, there was no AC, okay? In the summertime, it would be so hot, the walls would sweat. You might think I'm over-exaggerating. I'm not. People used to take a hot shower and walk around soaking wet just to feel like the breeze on that water on their body was cooling them down. It was like hellfire in that compound. Now, another thing that made this compound so extreme, okay, and I went through many of these as it was happening. There's another building, a smaller building right next to the compound. I can't really tell because I'm not a green screen expert, but it is death row. And these are images of the death row at Greensville Correctional Center. Okay, they got the chair and they got the lethal injection table. Now, while I was doing time in this prison, a couple people went through the death penalty, and it just is what it is. When they used to lock down the whole compound when they were doing these things. And I remember there was this guy from Richmond. He came, he was looking for a house to rob in the city that I'm living in now, in Virginia Beach. He came down here and he tied up a whole family, and so happened that they all ended up stabbing all of them and killing them with hammers. Okay, the whole family. And I believe he was executed at the same time that I was there. I think it was 2006. Alright? Executions, if they have a death chamber at the penitentiary that you're in, bruh, trust me, it's a real deal. And these pictures right here of nighttime of this ambulance, and remember, this compound was so huge it had its own medical facility on it. So if someone got shanked up or anything like that, it would go to the medical hospital that is on the compound for emergency assistance, okay, and then maybe go to outside medical. But this compound was so huge, they had their own medical staff. I'm talking about medical building. And the visitation, man, you know, most compounds, you walk up to the main place and you go visit them through that building. Well, not this place. This place was so big. In the center of this compound, it was like the size of 5 football fields, man. No lie. I mean, people had to take golf carts to hit. You could be doing time at one side of the prison and for 10 years straight and never know that your brother's on the other side of the compound doing 10 years too. That's how big it is. Alright? Now, I bounced around to every section, okay? One of the things that I did to make my time go by faster is I used to say, hey, I wanted to get out of that building and go somewhere else. I did time by meeting new people. Okay, sometimes a block would get boring. There'd be no money in the block. No one's gambling. No one's doing nothing like that on that compound. Well, guess what? Old Death, I went ahead and migrated to somewhere else. I ain't going to sit around where there ain't no money or no fun going on. And if you look closely, right next to these buildings are big fields. They look like little fields, but they're big fields. And each building had their own baseball field. Okay, softball field. And prison weights. Okay, a lot of people say, especially in California, they don't have weights no more. Well, in the state of Virginia, my friend, they definitely do. They really do. There ain't no segregations of races or gangs. In this penitentiary, they threw you all in there in the mix. Fend for yourself. The hole looks like the building that has like a little cross shape. Looks like a cross. I was in there for close to a year, okay? And I'll tell you what. They don't just put people in there because they want to be on PC. They don't do that. They don't do it. They're going to ship you to another section of the prison and main population. This building didn't have that many cells. For real. It didn't. It only held major violent offenders that couldn't get right in the population. OG shot callers. Stuff of that nature. Okay? And PC people, they never went to this hole, okay? They didn't have no PC for real, okay? The sexual predators, child molesters, homosexuals, Bloods, Crips, Latin Kings, anything, man, you name it, they threw them all in the mix. And you know who governed the race situation in this penitentiary? The inmates. Guards didn't do nothing. They didn't care. If you were a Blood, they threw you right up in the building that had a bunch of Crips. You know what I mean? They didn't care, bruh. That's how this compound was. I'll tell you what, it was a very dirty compound. And almost 99% of all of my tattoos came from this penitentiary. Now, let me get into the story of my first day in prison. Of course, I went to the receiving prison at first, and that wasn't really a major prison, okay? It was just a small prison where they get your levels and they determine which prison you go to from there. After that prison, I had some learning experiences, started getting the ropes of the penitentiary a little bit from other people. When I was riding in the back of a van on the way to this compound, when I saw it, I was in sheer terror. Just not because of the people that I saw, because I really couldn't see them. It looked like thousands of people grazing, cows grazing on the field because there's that many people, and it was wintertime. All you saw was a ton of little orange hats in the distance walking around. And that's when I said, oh God, please be with me, because this place is the real deal. I'm talking about it looked like its own freaking city. It could have its own area code. You know what I mean? For real. Jarrett, Virginia. Check it out. Go Google it. This place went hard, man. People were getting it in over here, man. I'm talking about it was a real full-fledged penitentiary. And when I walked in there for the first time, you know, I went into the thing where they tell you all the rules. Be careful of prison rape and all this stuff. Don't take anything from anybody because they're going to want something back plus more. And, you know, I heard the routine before. And they give you, you know, a shower with this lice removal type liquid stuff or whatever it is. And you go in there and you get your clothes and get dressed out. I'll never forget, this guy gave me some of the smallest clothes I've ever had, man. Some skinny jeans. And this was in 2004 when skinny jeans weren't even cool yet. You know what I mean? So I was heated about that. But, you know, I couldn't say nothing. I was young. I just had to learn the ropes. And I put on this clothes. And a lot of people, I could tell, were going to start joking me. But I grabbed my little bag. And I'm walking to the main compound, and it turns out that this single building that they put me in at first was actually another receiving building for that compound, okay? And I'll never forget, you know, in the prison that I left from, the little receiving prison, I smoked a little weed with someone that I knew for the first time in the penitentiary, okay? I smoked weed all the time on the streets, but that was my first time smoking weed in prison, and I'll never forget it. It was definitely a trip, okay? Now, when I entered this receiving building for this compound, this guy came up to me and he was like, you know, I got some bud, I got some cigarettes, man, you know what I mean? You want some bud? And, you know, I took the cigarettes, but at the same time I said, nah, man, I'm good on the weed, man. I'm good, you know what I mean? And it turns out that this guy, okay, later on down the road, I realized, hearing it from other inmates, that this guy was pretty much a plant. He was planted in that facility, in that little building, to try to get people tricked up and smoke some bud, okay? Because 2 days later, after I left that and went to the main population in the building, they gave me a urine screen. If I would have smoked that weed, I would have been raised to a level 5 or 6, okay? I would have been walking behind the yellow line. If I cross the yellow line, I'm getting a beanbag to the forehead by the shotgun, okay? You know what I mean? So I'm super glad I never smoked that bud. But later on, doing time in this prison, I did smoke weed again. And that was definitely an experience as well. I did a video on that. Go check it out. Now, when I get to the main population, I'm walking into this building, the building that I'm going to be doing most of my time in. And there was, what was it, 4 floors? It was 2 pods, and each pod had 2-story. So I was walking up to the first pod, and I was walking up the stairs. There's a stairwell attached to the pods coming from the outside. And when I walk into this place, man, I'm talking about, it was like the most ghetto projects I've ever seen in my life, man. I'm talking about everybody was out on the stairwell. I don't know if they let them out for wreck or what, but everyone was in the stairwell, mean mugging, saying some crazy stuff. I knew they were saying it to me, man. You know, I was young. I looked like a fresh green bean. So people were messing with me a little bit. They didn't put their hands on me or nothing like that. So I just kept looking forward, man, walking up the stairs, and I made it to my room. And, you know, I'll never forget it, man. I walked into the cell, and I had a cellmate. He wasn't in there yet. And I started unpacking all my stuff, and I got into the top bunk, and I just laid there for a second, man. I really didn't know what to do. You know what I mean? I was green. I was as green as a green screen behind me. You know what I mean? I didn't know what to do, man. I was scared for real. And this guy came up to the door. And the cool thing about these cells, you had a button. You could push a button and the door will open and close depending if the guard sees the button flashing. You know what I mean? So I was in the cell and I was unpacking all my stuff. I laid down and this guy came up to the window. Older guy. He kind of reminded me of me, but an older version. And he brought me this toilet paper sack full of tobacco, you know what I mean? And I took it from him. And, you know, people say don't take stuff from people that are probably just trying to rape you, you know? And honestly, I didn't know that raping wasn't going on like talking about anymore, you know what I mean? I didn't know that. I heard stories from other old heads in jail and saying it don't happen no more, this, that, and the third. So I took the cigarettes, you know what I mean? I started smoking a cigarette and talking to him. I really needed a cigarette bad. I'm a cigarette smoker, man. And I started talking to him. His name was E. And it turns out this man was in there for life. But he was probably one of the best guys that I met in the penitentiary, okay? He was in there for killing someone that killed his brother. And he was a barber. He was a bookie. He did everything, man. He had a lot of respect in that block. You know, everybody who needed something would come to him. Anything. And it turns out, you know, later on down the road, I met his cellmate a couple days later. His name was Jay. They called him E and J, like the liquor. I'll never forget it. And Jay, he was a little more quiet and standoffish towards me, man, at first. And I could tell, I don't know, he's just a younger guy. So, and you know, us young guys, we tend to butt heads until we know each other, trying to claim that dominance, you know what I mean? But after a few days, like a week or so, I learned that Jay was cool as hell, man. We all clicked, man. You know what I mean? It turned out we started smoking bud almost on the regular. I'm talking about long Black and Milds put together, making joints about that big. And, you know, I told stories on that too. It's not a good thing to go into the penitentiary and smoke weed. There's a lot of drama that comes with it. But this guy, Jay, he was a shank maker. He had plenty of shanks, man. He was exposing shanks to everyone. And, you know, people might say, why are you telling on E and J? Why are you telling people his personal business? Well, I'll tell you right now, Jay's probably definitely out by now. And second of all, this happened like over 10 years ago. You know how many E's and J's have been through the state penitentiary since then? Tons. Okay? So don't ever think I'm dropping dime on them. So, these guys, man, they were good. They showed me the ropes. and I really clicked with them, man. I really did. And they were probably the best guys to get in with because they were into everything. Shanks, gambling, barbers. You know, they were into everything, man. And when I became tight with them, I got a good amount of respect from everyone else. And then, you know, just by living in the block and dealing with people, you know, getting a prison tattoo machine and doing tattoos for the low, good work, I gained a lot of respect in the penitentiary very quickly, man. Very, very quickly. And I had hardly any problems. You know what I mean? The only time I ever had a problem in this penitentiary was when I ran up a debt. And I believe I was just getting swindled, man, for real. Someone was behind me a lot of the time telling someone else about the cards I had in my hand, so I ran up a debt. And the only way that you can get back from a debt like that, you know what I mean, is either pay it or go gamble even harder and go all in every time until you get back. And that's what I did. You know what I mean? I just kept gambling until I broke pretty much even and paid them what I had to pay them. But I was in debt probably like $300 at one point in the poker table, and that was probably the only stickiest situation I had in this pod. And that's another piece of advice for y'all going to the penitentiary if y'all might be going to for the very first time. If you're going to gamble, man, do it wisely. I grew and I learned. I was young. Remember, I was only 18. I'm 31 now. I was 18 and I was gambling like there was no tomorrow. And if I got locked up, I would still do it, but I'd be smarter. I would know when to walk away. When I was younger, I was still addicted to that rush. You know what I mean? I felt like I could win everything. So yeah, gambling, man. If you don't know what you're doing, better stay out of that business. So, you know, that first initial few days or weeks in the penitentiary, I was definitely shook. But thank the Lord above that He brought some good guys my way that had a lot of pull and had a lot of say-so in the block, man. And it made things a lot easier for me, man. And once I get to talk to people and stuff like that, they realize I'm cool, man. And, you know, this block had a lot of people doing life. A lot. And it's very strange to be surrounded by people that are doing life sentences, man. It really, really is. I mean, it's like you look at them and they're like a ghost because they're never going to see the outside again. It's weird, man. I'll never forget it. But, see, that was pretty much my first day in the penitentiary and first couple days. When it came to chow, people will know where to sit. You know, no one's going to beat you up for going to the chow hall and sitting in the wrong place. They ain't going to do that, man. They ain't. They just ain't. Trust me. If anything, I'll just tell you to get up, and then you'll get up and move. They had softball fields. I started playing baseball and all that crazy stuff. They had an indoor gym. I'm telling you, this prison, it was sweet, but it wasn't sweet. You know what I mean? It was definitely rough, man. And I've seen some vicious beatings, vicious attacks in this penitentiary. But anyways, I'm not going to make this too long, man. I just wanted to explain to y'all that the prison that I was in, it went hard in the paint, okay? It was a level 4, and, you know, being as young as I was, if I could survive, anyone can survive. But then again, I had common sense. Common sense and respect is key in the penitentiary. For real. Don't get it twisted, man. People are getting shanked and stabbed all the time in the penitentiary and raped. Maybe not as much as it used to be. But there are times and places, even in Virginia, where people are getting raped and the guards will never know because the people are too scared to tell them. Okay? For real. It's still happening. Always hold, I say this a lot in my videos, always hold a certain amount of respect and fear for the state penitentiary. And please, by all means, do your research on Greensville State Correctional in Virginia. Okay? Junk goes hard, boy. Tell you what. Till the next time, man. I love every last one of y'all. And if y'all haven't subscribed, go ahead and do it now.